We've had friends whose children have experienced this illness. And so we thought, something is up. And that's what really brought us to you. It's a little bit longer story. We didn't go directly to you because we didn't know about you right away, but we certainly had a bit of a journey, which I'm sure you want to ask questions about, but yeah, we're so grateful we did, because he wasn't getting the help he needed and he wasn't getting better. So that's kind of why I wanted to share, because today my little boy is back, and that's been a huge success for us. He's who he wants to be and who he always is, and he wasn't for about a year.
Kate, let's talk about that. What was life like for Eli and for your family a year ago?
And it's funny, Maggie, I wonder if before we ever saw the tics of PANDAS that the behavior of PANDAS was there. And I think I was guilty of not wanting to see that. I thought, oh, well, he's just a temperamental little boy. He's just emotional. He'll grow out of this. And what we were seeing was that Eli was having these extreme difficulties self-regulating. So when he would get mad, yeah, I mean, young kids get mad, but it would just escalate into just, he couldn't let go of the anger, just anger. And the more it would escalate, the more it would be difficult for our family. We'd try to go somewhere, we'd go to a park, or we'd be doing something at a play date. And then he would get angry and he couldn't calm down, and we'd have to remove him. So he was now suffering because, I'm going to start crying already. We'd have to pull him out of a park play date and have him sit in the car. And then he would beat himself up and he'd say, why do I do these things? I don't want to do this, Mom. I don't want to be this way. And he kept saying, I'm this way. And we're like, well, look, you're not any way. You just need to calm down. Like, we didn't see it. It wasn't until about a year ago in May where he started having these tics, where at first it was sort of subtle. Like, he would want to, the PANDAS, like he would want to line his pants up with his belly button. And then he would like roll his eyes, and we would say, why are you doing that? And he was like, I don't know. I don't want to talk about it. And I thought that's such a strange remark, because usually when kids do funny little things, they're like, oh, Mom, look at this funny thing I'm doing with my fingers. Or, they're not hiding it. And he was. Yeah. So we took him to our local pediatrician, who works with a lot of PANDAS kids and is well known for her success with them. Success being, years of antibiotic treatment, really. And we said, hey, look, he's exhibiting these symptoms. We're concerned. What do we do? And the doctor said, oh, look, we'll take some fish oil, give him a little vitamin D. And, if it gets any worse, here's a prescription for antibiotics. And it was like, okay, I was expecting a little bit more than that. Like, I understand. And it was like, okay, well, we tried that for a while. We were a little leery of the antibiotics, to be honest. But there just wasn't any real, like, why are we doing this? And what is all this supposed to do? It was just like, it wasn't take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning, but it was almost like that to us, right?
And meanwhile, I mean, what you're telling me is that on a daily basis, Eli was exhibiting behavior that wasn't him, and even several years before, you could see the onset of this.
Yes. And it was getting worse.
And you mentioned the sound that he would make.
Yeah. So like, it was, it started with like the lining up the pants with the zipper or whatever, the belly button. And then it went into like this eye roll. Like, he would just like roll his eyes. And then he was playing soccer, and all of a sudden he started going, whoo. And he'd go, whoo, whoo. And we were like, okay, that was like the next tic. And that one really stayed with him for a while. And it got to the point where like, we'd take him to soccer games and he'd be like, embarrassed, like, Mom, does any of the other kids see me doing this? And I said, I don't think they do. Like, and truly, kids weren't making fun of him. Nobody was seeing what we were seeing, but he felt it. And he was becoming more like, Eli's just like this fun loving kid who's like always up for the party, right? Like, he's like, party, kids, friends. Like, he is just the kid that thrives on friends. And he was starting to want to do less. He was shrinking back in himself. He was the anger and constantly like getting in trouble. He's like, why am I a bad kid? And it just broke my heart. I'm like, you're not a bad kid. You're just having a hard time controlling your temper.
I remember even on the first phone call we had, he was hiding. He didn't even want to get on the camera. He was so shy, and that's not Eli.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah. Cause now he's like, hey, Maggie, how are you?
But let's talk about that. I mean, what was the transformation what are the outcomes that you have now? I mean, you're about what, 3 months, like about a month or 2 months out of the program?
Yeah.
So you finished your program about 2 months ago. So in our 8-week program, what was the outcome that you were able to see?
Well, the outcome with Eli is the tics are gone, the anger's gone. And we eventually put him on antibiotic, but the antibiotic was exacerbating everything. And so then, with PANDAS, you played this game of like, rotating antibiotics, which antibiotic. And that's why a lot of kids are on antibiotics for years, just because they're trying to figure out like which one is going to work. And with your program, you know, and we'll talk about why we came to it in a minute, but within, gosh, what was it? Maybe 3 to 4 weeks, Maggie. I mean, we climbed a pretty steep hill, and then all of a sudden it was like, I got my son back. I mean, and it was overnight. It was like one day he was like, hoo hoo, and angry. And like, then it was like, oh, wow, the hoots are going down. He's not doing this as much. And then all of a sudden the anger just dissipated. And this like happy kid woke up, and he was like, he was saying to us, Mom, do you notice how happy I am now? Do you notice I don't get mad anymore? And we were just like, yeah, buddy, we noticed. And like, he's 7, like for a 7-year-old to even notice their own behavior was huge.
Yeah.
It was huge.
And I remember like even that week 4, week 5 on our live training calls, one of the things that you had mentioned was that it was hard for Scott to believe that it really was real. It's so hard when you're used to several years of this, you like think it's never going to go away.
Yeah.
And I remember like, it was, I mean, and we're on different journeys with this, but it was, even as the improvement was happening, it was hard for Scott to really believe this really is real. It's not just a day. It's not just a week. It's actually here to stay.
Yes.
And you had mentioned it wasn't until Eli said something that Scott was able to be like,
yeah. Because, you know, Scott, my husband loves his son so much, and he was so scared that he wouldn't be able to heal, that he didn't want to believe it until he felt like he had, it was just like too scary for him to even say like, he's okay. Because then if he's okay, what if he's not okay? Right. Mm-hmm. And so Eli was starting to get better and starting to get better. And I was like, I think his behavior is great. But then then there's the natural kid behavior, which comes up, and Scott would be like, oh, look at that. And I'm like, I think that's the natural kid behavior. Like, okay, so he didn't get in the car when you asked him to leave the park today. That's just being a kid, but he's not, you know what I mean? It was like, Scott was so scared to like, I was like, he's not going to be perfect. But then Eli came home a couple days after that, where Scott was like, I don't think this is working. I don't think it's working. Oh my God. Oh my God. And Eli's like, Dad, I'm happy. Look at me. Like he was unprompted. Like, look at me, Dad, I'm so happy. And it was like, Scott was crying. I was crying. And Eli's like, I'm just, everything's okay now. Like typical kid, like they just move on. Right. And you're like, God, it's been 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years. And so for those of you that are watching right now, and this has been your story with your child, whether it's irritable bowel syndrome, behavioral issues, sleep issues, history of, history of PANDAS, PANS, dealing with infection. I mean, if this has been your experience, you know, where you've been through specialists or people supposedly specializing in it and haven't gotten the outcome, say me too. And go ahead and list in the comments section what some of the, what you've experienced so far. So for me, this is a big thing. I mean, this is a big shift, Kate. Like you're dealing with someone that is a specialist in that area with PANDAS, and you were doing the antibiotics like you were supposed to. That was the only treatment, and you felt like the symptoms were getting worse. Well, my question is, why is it by week 4 of working with us, you were starting to get your son back? What was the difference? Why did you choose to work with us?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, I think before it was like, am I doing enough for my son? Like, okay, I'm giving him fish oil, I'm giving him some D, which both of those weren't enough to the levels that you recommend, right? So right there, we had the wrong dosage on those supplements. Mm-hmm. But then there's all these other supplements that we really needed to help bolster his immune system. This is an autoimmune. And you were the first person that said, this isn't PANDAS, this is autoimmune. Like, don't worry about what the label is. Yes. It's autoimmune. And we need to rebuild his resistance and get that wall up.
His immune system to work for him instead of against him.
Yeah. And as a parent to a child, like I just want my kid to be better, right? Like every parent, you just want your child to be better. Mm-hmm. And I felt like what I was doing was like, well, you know, should we do a food elimination program with them? Should we give them a little bit more of the stuff?
That's what every parent's saying. Another elimination diet?
Yeah.
Should I Google and find out how many supplements is good for PANDAS?
Right.
You'd be
it was like playing a guessing game. Right. It was a guessing game. And that's why I said, I want to work with Maggie, because you said it's not a guessing game, Kate, it's a data game. And I knew if I had data, then I would know that I was doing everything I possibly could for my son. It wasn't like, okay, well, that didn't work for a month. Let's try something different. And up until then, it was just like, let's try this. Let's try this. Let's do, you know, less gluten. Let's take out eggs. Let's take out carrots. Is it carrots? Is it meat? Is it?
You don't want to guess with food on a kid. It's hard enough getting your kid to eat, right? And then you were guessing, and I mean, for a year or two, I mean, we talked about you were doing some elimination diet and not getting an outcome, wondering if this change made a difference, if that change made a difference. You had no valuable data to actually work with. It was a guessing game after 2 years.
Yeah. And I want my kid to have a normal life, Maggie. Like when my kid goes to a birthday party, like one of the things when, you know, our doctors looked at the food testing results, they're like, oh, he's allergic to eggs. And you and Frankie were like, no, he's not, he's fine. And I'm like, oh, thank God, because now my kid can have things that have eggs in them. Like, eliminating eggs is a big deal from a kid's diet. There's a lot of things that use eggs, like baked goods, even with coconut flour,
Yes.
gluten-free. And I'm like, I want my child to have as normal a life as possible, eat as normal of foods, and to have as least resistance as possible in his life. And I wasn't able to do that at all.
Well, here's the thing is you bring up a really good point. This whole thing with food intolerance testing, that's why I don't even like that word. I call it food mapping, because the process of food intolerance testing, the way that it's done, the way it's spoken about, the way people use the data is kind of a lot of bunk. But the reason it's not a bunk is food intolerance testing isn't bunk. But the problem is that in people with autoimmunity, first of all, you got to get the right test. If you get the wrong test, you're going to get bad data in, bad data out. And many of the tests you're talking about, even doctors using, that's definitely like mail order, but like over the counter testing, the data just doesn't have the validity in my experience at all in autoimmune disease. And then doctors that do run it, some of them are not running the right tests. Yeah. And in the right test in people with autoimmune disease, definitely to me is very different, having ran thousands of these, okay? But the other piece of this is proper interpretation. So here's the thing is, if you're not working with someone who knows what's a false positive and what's a false negative, they're gonna tell you to eliminate crap that you don't need to, good stuff that you didn't need to. Like in Eli's case, though, even though the test said eggs positive, we showed you how it was a false positive or a false negative and explained that. So you were armed with that knowledge and you knew with certain things like, nah, you do not have to eliminate eggs. And how important is eggs in Eli's diet?
Huge. Right.
He loves them.
He loves them. Right. Totally.
Like we just need
one less thing I have to say, no, you can't have. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. What is having, so certainty and clarity you saying is around data. So it's data around like a data-driven approach to supplementation.
Data-driven approach to healing my son, right? And understanding what his body is going through. So the other thing that was driving me crazy is with, even though the doctor has so much more information and so much more knowledge and education than I am, I want to know. I don't want to just be told like, here, go try this and then come back. Mm-hmm. Why? What is that supposed to do? How's it supposed to help my son? What else am I supposed to be looking for? What is this supposed to be doing to him? Like, I want to understand that so I can help him in the best way possible and not just be told like, oh, you don't need to worry about that. Why don't I need to worry about that? And that's what you did for us. You made sure even when we came to each of the QA calls or the mastermind calls, like you would even like drill us like, okay, so Kate, why is that? And I'm like, oh gosh, like you made sure we knew why you were telling us to do what we were doing or what the information my kid needed. And that me peace of mind. That's priceless.
You know why? Okay, so this is very different. I tell people this all the time, and now you understand it. I say, working with us, we're an 8-week online educational coaching program. Working with us is completely different than working with another functional doctor or integrative doctor for 8 weeks or a functional nutritionist for 8 weeks. And the reason is for me, I think this is a great conversation. This is that what is the nature of the doctor-patient relationship as you have experienced it, and most of us. And if I'm going to go through this example, but that's you, say me too. You go in a doctor's office, you're here, the doctor is here, you go in and say what your symptoms, your problem is. They decide what testing they're willing to bestow upon you. They give you the interpretation they want for you or lack thereof, but they just tell you what they think you should do. You go, oh, okay. You go and do that. And then whether it helps or not, you come back and you say it helped or it didn't help, repeat the same cycle. Now, here's the problem with the cycle of how medical care is typically delivered. There's nothing in this process, even if you go back to this doctor 10 times, no matter how much of a guru specialist this is, okay, is that there's nothing that elevates this person, you, to go from here to educate you, to empower you, to actually help you develop the critical thinking. So you have mastery around what's going on with autoimmune disease, right? There's nothing in this process that increases your power, your mastery of this. So for me, what we do is totally night and day because it's huge. Why do we get crazy outcomes like this? This is the outcome you're talking about with Eli. It's like a medical miracle, but it isn't. It isn't. It's a reality in our program every single day. Why? Because we actually have the process to change the nature of who you are, to actually be the master of autoimmune disease for you and your child. Literally a champion in this. And how do we do that? Is number one is data. Number two is we actually have teaching modules that train you and Scott, like video modules that you went through. And number three, we actually have live training calls, hours every week in a small group like this on video. That really helps teach you critical thinking. How does this person become super smart like this? You got to train for it. You got to have a guide. You got to have a master. You got to have your own data to elevate you. So you get to this point where you can have a collaborative conversation where you actually are the pilot and no longer the passenger in your child's autoimmune disease. And you can be on equal plane to an equal conversation to invite collaboration with your doctors.
Totally. That makes so much a difference. I can't even tell you. Just my peace of mind and knowing that now, and again, like nobody ever said this was an autoimmune thing. It's just like, oh, it's PANDAS. He's got this infection, take some antibiotics. It could take a few years, you know, and maybe he'll grow out of it and we'll just see what happens. It was just this sort of like random hackney. And I'm like, wait a minute. Nobody said like his blood cells may not be strong enough. His immune system may not be strong enough. We're not gonna be able to kick the, I mean, if someone has a poor immune system, you can be given antibiotics forever, right? Like, I'm like, no, I don't want him to be on antibiotics. That's getting rid of all the good stuff in his body too. How do I make my child have the most optimal health possible and the most normal life possible? That is what I wanted. And I wasn't going to get it by just giving him antibiotics for the next 3 to 4 years and playing whack-a-mole with antibiotics and hoping we were gonna find the right formula. Now I know I'm helping my child be as healthy as he possibly can so that this doesn't return.
I mean, so let me ask you this. I mean, it is an investment in playing full out the whole 8 weeks in our program. You and Scott, you guys played full out. You did every module. You came to, you came to the calls, you listened to these recordings, and you really was part of the drill to drill this mastery into you. This is a huge investment of your time. I mean, time, effort, and finances as well. And so for me, let me ask you this. I mean, was this worth all that investment in it for this outcome?
Oh yeah. I mean, we're talking about my child's health, Maggie. We're talking about his quality of life. So my child could continue to go up and down on a roller coaster of hooting, being embarrassed, being out of control, in our family, just living in this tense situation, me living with this overwhelming guilt and like, oh my God, am I doing enough? Mm-hmm. Scott being beside himself. I mean, yeah, like 5 times what we invested, and yes, it's intense, but like, what else are you going to do? You're going to do the very best you can for your child. There's not going to be just this simple little magic bullet, but with the data, I know exactly what I need to do. I know exactly what Eli needs. And you're there to show us how to do it every step of the way and ask all the questions. So now we're just like, okay, we got it. Like we totally understand. And to have that level of confidence is priceless. It's totally priceless.
Well, to me, it's almost like this is a different Kate as a mother than I saw 2-3 months ago.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, 2-3 months ago, I was just on pins and needles and I was just like, how can we help him? And the whole family's stressed out. When you have a child that's ill, it's not like, oh, they're sick for a couple of days and then, you're all going to have chicken soup and, watch a few movies. I mean, this is pervading every aspect of your life. It's preventing your family from going out and having fun outings. Our older son is feeling like he's not getting enough attention. Scott and I are, not fighting, but we're agitated with each other because, he's worn out, I'm worn out, everyone's worn out from a child, overwhelmed. Yeah. This is not a good life for anyone. And we lived it for 2 years, like done. So yeah, if I've got to invest 8 weeks and some time and money to make that go away and make my child as healthy as he possibly can, his tics are gone away. He's happy now. He's playing with his friends. He's playing soccer and he's in control of his life again. Yeah, that's like a no-brainer for me. That was the easy part. Yeah.
I love that. And for those of you with children or yourself are suffering with autoimmune disease symptoms, and you don't have a clear path here, this is about clarity. And our program is to address all autoimmune diseases. So if you haven't watched the online training, please go to healingautoimmunediseasenaturally.com and go ahead and register and just watch the training about what is the big paradigm shift that causes people like Kate and your family to have these amazing outcomes in like a very short period of time. I'm not talking years, I'm not even talking months, I'm talking weeks, right? There is a program, there is a process, there is data to make this process extremely outcome driven, right? So this is all about outcome. So those of you who haven't, if you have symptoms yourself and you know that people, either families with children with symptoms, go ahead and please share this video right now and put their name underneath the video so they can watch it later. And go ahead and give Kate a thumbs up and a heart and the wow face for sharing with us, because this is your own personal journey in your family and this is very intimate. This is your child. So I appreciate your bravery in sharing this with us. And I appreciate you so much. I'm happy for you.
Maggie, you're like a rock star in our house. Eli's like, there's Maggie. Mom's going to talk to Maggie today. Like he's so grateful. He really is, because he feels like he has his life back too. So thank you. Thank you for what you do. And thank you for helping people in the way we need to be helped. Right?
I love it. Thank you, Kate.
You're welcome.